sold-out arenas to scandalous tabloid headlines, the world of rock has been filled with mystery and intrigue. We're counting down the top 20 rumors about rock stars that were so outlandish you won't believe they're actually true. Get ready to have your minds blown. 20. Michael Jackson wrote music for Sonic the Hedgehog. Kicking things off at number 20, you might think that Michael Jackson and Sonic the Hedgehog have nothing in common, but you'd be wrong. The King of Pop and the Blue Blur share a surprising and fascinating connection. They both worked on the same video game. That's right, MJ was the hidden mastermind behind some of the tunes of Sonic 3, the 1994 Sega Genesis classic. Who would have guessed? Michael Jackson, a video game and Sonic fan, composed music for Sonic 3 with Sega. He and his team made tracks with his sounds and voice, creating sonic effects with his mouth. He was very into it. Michael Jackson had some problems while working on Sonic 3. He was not satisfied with the sound quality of the Genesis console, which he thought was too low and noisy. He also faced a serious scandal when he was accused of child molestation in 1993. He was concerned about his image, his career, and his legal situation. He decided to quit the project, and he asked Sega to remove his name and his music from the game. He did not want to be linked to Sonic 3, and he did not want anyone to know that he was part of it. He kept it a secret, and he moved on with his life. But Sega didn't delete his music, they just modified it. They kept some of his tracks and they changed some of his sounds. They didn't credit him, but they didn't deny him either. They left his music in the game and they left his fans in the dark. Michael Jackson's music for Sonic 3 was a shocking and intriguing revelation. It showed his musical skills, his interest in games, and his secrecy. It made us curious and impressed. 19. The song Kickstart My Heart by Motley Crue was inspired by a Nikki Sixx overdose. Nikki Sixx is the bassist and co-founder of the legendary rock band Motley Crue. He is also a survivor of one of the most shocking and dramatic episodes in the history of rock and roll. He died of an overdose and was brought back to life by a miracle. It happened on December 23, 1987, when Sixx was 28 years old. He was addicted to a powerful and dangerous substance that he called happy juice. He injected himself with too many needles of the substance and his heart stopped beating. He collapsed on the floor of his dealer's apartment and his friends tried to revive him with no success. They called an ambulance and the paramedics arrived. They found Sixx lying on the floor, blue and lifeless. They tried to resuscitate him with a shot of adrenaline, but it did not work. They pronounced him dead and put him in a body bag. But then, something incredible happened. Sixx suddenly woke up inside the body bag, gasping for air. He ripped the tubes and wires from his body and jumped out of the ambulance. He was alive, but he was not grateful. He was angry and confused. He ran back to his dealer's apartment and demanded more heroin. He wanted to get high again, even after he had just died. He later wrote a song about his experience called Kickstart My Heart. The song became a hit and a classic of the Motley Crue catalog. It also became a symbol of Sixx's resilience and recovery. He eventually quit heroin and became sober. He also became an advocate for drug awareness and prevention. Nikki Sixx's story is one of the most controversial and intriguing in the history of rock and roll. It shows how drugs can destroy and endanger lives, but also how music can heal and inspire. It shows how a rock star can die and come back to life. 18. The Rolling Stones bassist fell for a 13-year-old. Now this one is a shocker. Did you hear about the Rolling Stones bassist falling for a 13-year-old? Yeah, it happened, and it's as scandalous as it sounds. We're not holding back on the shocking details. The Rolling Stones are one of the most famous rock bands in history, but not all of their members have a clean reputation. Bill Wyman, the bassist who played with the band for over 30 years, had a shocking secret that shocked the world when it was revealed. He married a girl who was young enough to be his granddaughter. Wyman met Mandy Smith when she was only 13 years old and he was 47. He was already a father of 3 and a grandfather of 1. He pursued her and seduced her, and they had been together for the first time when she was 14. This was a crime in the UK where the age of consent is 16, but Wyman did not care. He continued to see her behind the scenes, hiding their relationship from the public and the press. Wyman, 52, married Smith, 18, in 1989. They had a big wedding in London, but everyone was against them. They had nothing in common and fought a lot. They split in 1990 and divorced in 1991. Wyman regretted it, and Smith felt used. Wyman and Smith's story is one of the most scandalous and controversial in the history of rock and roll.
I wish him lots of luck. I think it's a very good idea he got married.
I'm glad he's finally taken the plunge.
17. Gary Glitter used his fame to get young girls. He was once the leader of the gang, a pop star who sold millions of records and filled stadiums with his glam rock hits. But behind the glitter and the glam, Gary Glitter was hiding a dark and disturbing secret. He was a pedophile who preyed on young girls for decades. Gary Glitter, whose real name is Paul Gadd, was first exposed in 1999 when he was caught with thousands of images of child pornography on his computer. He was sentenced to 4 months in prison, but that was only the tip of the iceberg. In 2006, he was convicted of hurting 2 girls aged 10 and 11 in Vietnam. He spent 2.5 years in jail before being deported to the UK, where he faced more charges of abuse. In 2015, he was found guilty of 6 offenses. He had hurt 3 girls between 1975 and 1980 when he was at the height of his fame. He lured them backstage to his dressing room, where he isolated them from their mothers and assaulted them. One of his victims was less than 10 years old when he tried to rape her in her bed. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison, but he was released in February 2023 after serving half his term. He is now 79 years old and living under strict license conditions, including wearing a GPS tag and being monitored by the police and probation officers. Gary Glitter's story is one of the most shocking and shameful in the history of pop music. He used his fame and power to exploit and harm innocent children who suffered lasting trauma and damage. He showed no remorse or repentance for his crimes, and he betrayed the trust and love of his fans. He is not a star, but a monster.
Gary Glitter, he's the leader of the gang.
16. Frank Zappa was attacked on stage and almost killed. Frank Zappa was a musical genius, a master of satire, and a fearless innovator. He was also a target of hate, ridicule, and violence. His weird and bizarre music challenged the norms and conventions of society and provoked the wrath of many. But nothing prepared him for the night he was almost killed by a jealous fan. Zappa's last European show in London was a disaster. He played a Beatles song as a joke, but a jealous fan hated it. He pushed Zappa off the stage into the pit. Zappa was seriously injured and everyone was shocked. The tour had already been ruined by a fire in Switzerland, which inspired a song by Deep Purple. Howell tried to escape, but he was caught by some angry fans who beat him up and handed him over to the police. He later confessed that he attacked Zappa because of his girlfriend. Zappa suffered severe injuries from a fan's attack. He had many surgeries and therapies, but he never fully recovered. His voice changed, and he had pain and infections. He lost millions in shows and lawsuits. Zappa's story is controversial and intriguing.
Because he had that look. He had the look of a real...
15. Keith Moon gave Led Zeppelin their name. Led Zeppelin is one of the most influential and successful rock bands of all time, but their name was not their own idea. It was a joke made by another famous drummer who thought they would fail miserably. In 1966, Page, Jones, and Beck wanted to form a supergroup. They asked Moon, The Who's drummer, to join. Moon was keen, but he was with The Who. They talked at a pub. Moon joked that their band would be a lead balloon, meaning a flop. He did not mean it, and he did not think they would use it. Page remembered Moon's joke about a lead balloon and liked it as a band name. He thought it was ironic and catchy. He changed LEAD to LED and added Zeppelin, a word for an airship. He suggested Led Zeppelin to his bandmates, and they liked it too. They chose a Zeppelin image as their logo and a heavy and hard sound as their style. They were set to launch. Led Zeppelin's story is one of the most controversial and intriguing in the history of rock and roll. It shows how a casual and sarcastic remark can inspire and motivate a creative and ambitious project. It also shows how a band can rise from a joke to a legend. 14. Ozzy Osbourne snorted ants. Ozzy Osbourne is a rock legend who did some crazy stuff in his life. One of the craziest stories is that he snorted ants with a straw when he was on tour with Motley Crue in 1984. But is this true or just a lie? Well, it depends on who you ask. Some people say it really happened, and that Ozzy and Nikki Sixx, the Motley Crue bass player, were trying to outdo each other with gross things. They say Ozzy also drank his pee and licked Nikki's pee off the floor. But others say it never happened and that Ozzy only snorted a little spider that was on the ground. One of them is Jake E. Lee, who played guitar for Ozzy and was there when it happened. So we don't know for sure if Ozzy inhaled ants or not because there is no proof or witness that can say yes or no. Ozzy himself can't remember because he was too wasted at the time. But he has said that he did a lot of bad and nasty things in his career and that he is sorry for some of them. He has also had problems with health and has tried to get better many times. So the ant snorting story might be true or might be false, but it is definitely one of the most shocking and weird stories in rock and roll history. Ozzy Osbourne is a special and controversial person who has made and entertained a lot of fans with his music and personality. 13. David Bowie couldn't remember Station to Station. What if you made a masterpiece and forgot about it? That's what happened to David Bowie, the rock star who changed his style and persona like a chameleon. In 1976, he released Station to Station, an album that mixed funk, soul, and electronic music, and introduced his new character, the Thin White Duke, a cold and elegant aristocrat. But Bowie was in a dark and dangerous place when he made this album. He was addicted to cocaine, paranoid, and obsessed with the occult. He was living in Los Angeles, but he felt like he was on another planet. He later said that he had no memory of recording Station to Station or even being in America at that time. He was in a state of psychic terror, and his music reflected that. The album is full of references to mysticism, religion, and Nietzsche, the philosopher who said God is dead. The title track is a 10-minute epic that starts with a train noise and ends with a prayer. The album also includes the hit single Golden Years, a catchy song that hides a sense of despair. Station to Station is a brilliant and complex work, but also a disturbing and controversial one. Bowie caused a scandal when he made some comments that seemed to support fascism. He later apologized and blamed his drug problem. He also moved to Europe to escape from LA and start a new phase in his career. Station to Station is a journey into the mind of a genius who was losing himself. It is a mysterious and fascinating album that you will never forget, even if Bowie did. 12. Prince was a working Jehovah's Witness. Prince was a rock star who made amazing music and shocked the world with his style and sexuality. But he also had a hidden side that most people didn't know about. He was a Jehovah's Witness, a religion that has strict rules and beliefs. He grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist, a Christian group that observes the Sabbath on Saturdays. But he changed his religion in 2001 after talking with his friend Larry Graham, a former bass player for Sly and the Family Stone. Graham was a Jehovah's Witness, and he convinced Prince to study the Bible with him. Prince liked what he learned, and he decided to join the Jehovah's Witnesses. He had to change his habits and behaviors. He stopped celebrating birthdays and holidays. He avoided blood transfusions. He was careful about his words and songs. He preached door to door as Brother Nelson. He shared his faith and invited people to study the Bible. Some people recognized him and were shocked. They asked him about his music and life. Prince was polite and friendly, but he focused on God's message. He said his music was from God and for God. Prince was a Jehovah's Witness for the rest of his life. He never stopped making music, but he also never stopped serving God. He was a faithful and devoted member of his congregation. He attended meetings and assemblies, and he donated money and time to his religion. He was proud of his faith, and he wanted to share it with others. He was Prince, and he was a Jehovah's Witness.
You're also a Jehovah's Witness now.
Yes.
How has that changed your life?
Immensely. I studied...
11. The White Stripes weren't really siblings after all. You might think you know everything about the White Stripes, the rock duo that rocked the 2000s with their raw and catchy songs. But did you know that they lied to us about who they really were? Jack and Meg White were not brother and sister as they claimed. They were actually married and then divorced. The White Stripes were a Detroit band formed by Jack and Meg White in 1997. They played simple music with guitar, drums, and vocals. They used red, white, and black colors for everything. They liked the number 3. They lied that they were siblings, not spouses. They changed their names to be more mysterious. They kept up this lie for years, even after they got divorced in 2000. They became famous and their music was loved by fans and critics. They released 6 albums and had hits like Seven Nation Army and Fell in Love with a Girl. But their lie was eventually exposed when a journalist found their marriage and divorce records. He published the story in 2001 and revealed that Jack and Meg White were not siblings, but exes. The fans were shocked and some felt betrayed. Jack and Meg White admitted the truth, but they said it was not a big deal. They said that they only cared about their music and that their relationship was not important. The White Stripes continued to make music until 2011 when they announced their breakup. They said that they wanted to preserve their legacy and that they had nothing more to say. They left behind a great body of work, but also a lot of questions.
You and I will walk together again. I can tell that.
10. Rick James, an American Bandstand. Rick James was a funk superstar who sang about being high on life and love. But he was also high on something else, and he was not shy about it. He even admitted that he was high on American Bandstand, the popular TV show that featured live performances by famous musicians. Here is the truth behind Rick James' wild antics on live TV. Rick James was high on cocaine when he performed You and I on American Bandstand in 1978. He wore leather, a bandana, and sunglasses. He feared the police and the host, Dick Clark. He called his music psychic terror, but he overcame his fear and gave a great show. He sang, danced, and kissed a girl. He thrilled the crowd and won over Dick Clark, who complimented his talent and music. But he also did something else. He admitted that he was high on cocaine on live TV. He did not say it directly, but he hinted at it. He said that he was feeling good and that he was on cloud 9. He also said that he was super freaky and that he was ready to party. He said that he was living the high life and that he was out of sight. He said that he was Rick James and that he was a star. He was not lying, but he was also a rebel, a misfit, a provocateur. Nine. Prince had a son who passed away. Brace yourselves for a heartbreaking revelation. Did you know that Prince had a son who passed away? The Purple One's personal life takes a somber turn in this shocking revelation. Prince was a musical genius who amazed the world with his songs and style. But he also had a tragic secret that he kept hidden for a long time. He was a father, but he lost his son after only a week of his birth. How did this happen? And how did it affect Prince and his music? Here is the heartbreaking story of Prince's son, Amir Nelson. Prince met Mayte when she was a young dancer and Prince was a famous musician. They married in 1996 and soon had a baby boy, Amir. But Amir had a rare and fatal disorder, Pfeiffer syndrome, that affected his bones and organs. He died in his father's arms after only a week of life. Prince and Mayte were heartbroken, and they hid their pain from the world. Prince even pretended that his son was alive and showed Oprah a playroom for him. He said he trusted God's plan, but he was really in denial. Their marriage fell apart and they divorced in 2000. They suffered from depression and guilt, and they never spoke of their son. It was only in 2017 when Mayte published a memoir that she opened up about Amir. She wanted to honor him and to help other grieving parents. She also said that she still loved Prince and that he was her soulmate. Prince never had another child and he never got over Amir's death. He continued to make music, but he also became addicted, which eventually killed him in 2016. He was 57 years old. He left behind a legacy of amazing music, but also a sad story of a father who lost his son. Prince was a musical genius, but he was also a human being who suffered and loved. He was Prince, and he was Amir's father. 8. The Beatles honed their skills in a strip club. Before they conquered the world, the Fab Four honed their skills in a strip club. The Beatles were the greatest band of all time, but they didn't start out that way. They had to work hard and play hard, and sometimes they played in places you wouldn't believe. Find out how the Fab Four learned their craft in the most unlikely place. The Beatles were poor and unknown musicians from Liverpool. They got a chance to play in Hamburg, Germany, thanks to a promoter named Alan Williams. They went there in 1960 hoping to make it big, but Hamburg was a dirty and dangerous city, and the clubs they played in were sleazy and shady. One of them was a strip club where they had to play boring songs for the strippers. The Beatles hated it, but they had no choice. The Beatles learned a lot in Hamburg. They learned how to play, sing, and charm better. They learned how to be a real band. They learned from each other, from other musicians, from the music, from the people, from life. They learned and they changed. They changed their look, sound, style, attitude. They became more confident, creative, cool. They became the Beatles we love. The Beatles played in Hamburg for 2 years on and off. They played in different clubs, but they never forgot that club. It was there that they started their journey, that they became a legend. It was there that they proved themselves, that they rocked the world. It was there that they made history in the most unexpected place. Magnificent. 7. Danny Kirwan's departure from Fleetwood Mac was actually attributed to a bad trip. Danny Kirwan was a talented guitarist who joined Fleetwood Mac when he was only 18 years old. He helped the band create some of their best albums, like Then Play On and Bare Trees. But he also had a troubled mind and a terrible experience with substances that changed his life forever. Here is the story of how Danny Kirwan lost his way and left the band. Danny Kirwan was always a shy and sensitive person who had a hard time dealing with fame and pressure. He was also prone to mood swings and depression, and he used drugs and alcohol to cope. He was especially fond of one thing, a powerful psychedelic drug that can alter your perception and consciousness. He took them many times, and sometimes he had bad trips where he saw and felt scary things. But he never had a trip as bad as the one he had in Munich, Germany in 1970. Danny Kirwan of Fleetwood Mac took one at a party and had a horrible trip. He saw hell, felt dying, and feared his bandmates. He locked himself in a room for hours. The trip changed him. He became paranoid, unstable, and violent. He fought with the band over music. He smashed his guitar on stage. He lost touch with reality and everyone. The band tried to help him, but they couldn't. They decided to fire him in 1972 after he refused to go on stage for a show. They were sad and angry, and they felt like they had lost a friend and a brother. Danny Kirwan was out of the band and out of control. He tried to make a solo career, but he failed. He ended up homeless and mentally ill, and he disappeared from the public eye. He died in 2018 at the age of 68. Danny Kirwan was a brilliant musician, but he was also a tragic figure. He had a bad trip that ruined his life, and he left behind a legacy of great music and great sorrow. Six, the Beatles smoked a happy cigarette in Buckingham Palace. The Beatles were the biggest pop stars in the world in 1965, but they were also rebels and pranksters. They did not care much for the rules and traditions of the society they lived in, and they often mocked and challenged them. That's why when they met Queen Elizabeth II for the first time, they could not help but giggle and snicker. The Beatles got MBEs, members of the Order of the British Empire, a high honor in 1965. Many people were angry because they were rock musicians, not heroes or leaders. The Beatles did not care much, and they had fun. John Lennon said they smoked pot in the palace's bathroom before seeing the Queen. He said it was to relax and enjoy. He said they laughed because it was like a joke, and they were amazed. George Harrison, the band's guitarist and spiritual seeker, denied Lennon's claims years later. He said they did not smoke, but they had a cigarette. He said they were giggling because they were nervous and excited, and because they found the whole situation surreal and amusing. He also said they respected the Queen and her role, and they did not mean to be disrespectful. The truth may never be known for sure, but the fact remains that the Beatles and the Queen had a memorable encounter that day. The Queen was gracious and polite, and she asked each Beatle about their hobbies and interests. The Beatles were polite and witty, and they made the Queen smile and laugh.
I don't know. Both bits. Yeah. Have you been in any way flattered by the hysterical?
5. John Phillips' ancestral secrets were horrifyingly true. John Phillips was the leader and songwriter of the Mamas and the Papas, one of the most popular and influential bands of the 1960s. He wrote hits like California Dreamin' and Monday Monday, and he helped create the sound of the hippie era. But behind his success and fame, he had a dark and twisted side that shocked and hurt his family and friends. John Phillips was an addict, a womanizer, and an abuser. He cheated on his wives and girlfriends, and he mistreated his children. He was obsessed with power, and he did not care about the consequences of his actions. He was a master manipulator who used his charm and talent to get what he wanted. But the most shocking and disturbing secret of John Phillips was his relationship with his daughter, Mackenzie Phillips. John Phillips had a 10-year affair with his daughter, Mackenzie Phillips. She was a singer and an actress who revealed the truth in her 2009 memoir. He said they were in love, but he abused her. She had an abortion and suffered from addiction and depression. Mackenzie's shocking revelation caused a scandal and a controversy. Some people believed her, and some people doubted her. Some of her family members supported her, and some of them rejected her. John Phillips died in 2001 before she came forward with her story, so he never faced any charges or consequences. He left behind a legacy of great music, but also a legacy of great pain. He was John Phillips, the Wolf King of LA, and he was a monster.
Well, a pretty little girl, 17 years old, hair just as yellow as the sky.
4. The wedge between the Phillips family. The wedge between the Phillips family goes even deeper than you might think. The Phillips family seemed to have it all: fame, fortune, and talent. But behind the scenes, they had a lot of problems. Their family dynamics were twisted and toxic, and they led to a lot of pain and resentment. The The Phillips family were musicians and actors and drug addicts. John Phillips led the Mamas and the Papas and married Michelle Phillips. He had Mackenzie, China, and Bijou from different marriages. He cheated and mistreated his family. He raped and had an incestuous affair with Mackenzie. He controlled her. He was a manipulator who used his charm and talent. John Phillips hurt his family. Michelle divorced him and fought for China. She cheated with his bandmate and the band split. Mackenzie was a drug addict and an actress who had his child and aborted it. China was a singer who had drug and depression problems. She became a Christian and left him. Bijou was a model and an actress who lived wildly. The Phillips family was a mess and they never healed their wounds. John Phillips died in 2001 before Mackenzie revealed their incestuous relationship. He left behind a legacy of great music, but also a legacy of great pain.
Actually, the suggestion is that why don't we invite Cass over also when we got back from Washington? And he said, you got to hear her sing, she's fabulous.
3. Bon Jovi really was sued for $400 million. Bon Jovi were one of the biggest rock bands of the 80s and 90s with hits like Livin' on a Prayer and It's My Life. But they also faced a huge legal challenge when they were sued for $400 million by a Boston musician who accused them of plagiarism. Here is the scandal that rocked the rock world. Samuel Bartley Steele, leader of Chelsea City Council, sued Bon Jovi for stealing his lyrics from his 2004 song, Man, I Really Love This Team, a Boston Red Sox anthem. He said Bon Jovi used his lyrics in their 2007 song, I Love This Town, a Major League Baseball song. He said he had proof that John Bon Jovi heard his song in 2004 and copied him. He asked for $400 million, $100,000 for every CD that Bon Jovi sold. He said he was right and he wanted credit, recognition, and an apology. But Bon Jovi did not agree with him. They denied any wrongdoing and said that Steele's claim was absurd and baseless. They said that their song was original and that they did not copy anyone. They also said that there were many songs that used the phrase, I love this in their titles, and that it was not a unique expression. They hired lawyers and music experts who defended their case and dismissed Steele's evidence. Steele sued Bon Jovi for stealing his lyrics. Judge Gorton dismissed his lawsuit. He said the songs were not similar in music or words. He said Steele had no case. Steele lost and got nothing from Bon Jovi. He was angry and said the judge was biased. He said he would appeal, but he never did. He disappeared. Bon Jovi won their lawsuit and they continued their successful career. They were happy and relieved, and they said that they were glad that the truth prevailed. They said that they were proud of their song and that they loved their fans. They were Bon Jovi, and they were rock stars. 2. Sum 41 was sued over throwing a hot dog. Get ready for some legal drama with Sum 41. Did you know they were sued over throwing a hot dog? Yes, a hot dog. Sum 41 were a famous punk rock band in the early 2000s with hits like Fat Lip and In Too Deep. But they also got into trouble for throwing a hot dog at a man during a baseball game. Yes, a hot dog. This silly prank turned into a serious lawsuit and a $6 million headache for the band. Here is the absurd story of how a hot dog caused a legal drama. Michael Sudor, a contractor and a Red Wings fan, was hit by a hot dog thrown by Sum 41, a band who pranked him and filmed it for their DVD. He sued them for $6 million plus attorney's fees, claiming they violated his civil rights and ruined his reputation in business. He said he learned about the DVD from a client and that he wanted money and an apology. Sum 41 said it was a harmless joke and that Sudor's shirt and hat made him a target. They said the hot dog was not worth $6 million and that he had no case. They defended themselves in court with lawyers and experts. Judge Gorton ruled in their favor and dismissed Sudor's lawsuit. He said there was no evidence of harm or harassment and that the hot dog was not a big deal. He said Sudor had no case and wasted the court's time. He dismissed his claim. Sudor lost his lawsuit and he did not get any money or apology from Sum 41. He was disappointed and angry, and he said that the judge was wrong and biased. He said that he would appeal the decision, but he never did. Sum 41 won their lawsuit and they continued their successful career. They were happy and relieved, and they said that they were glad that the truth prevailed. They said that they were proud of their music and that they loved their fans. They said that they were not bothered by Sudor's lawsuit and they would keep making music. They were Sum 41 and they were punk rockers.
Faster we're falling, we're stopping and stalling, we're running in circles again.
1. Iggy Pop vomited and put his member on an amplifier. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. The number one rumor that turned out to be true. Iggy Pop was a rock legend who did some crazy stuff in his life. One of the craziest things he did was vomiting on stage and putting his member on an amplifier. He did this during a show with his band The Stooges at a New York club called Ungano's in 1970. He was high on drugs and booze and he wanted to shock and provoke the audience. He also cut himself with a broken bottle and whipped himself with a microphone cord. He later said that he was in a state of psychic terror and that his music reflected that. He was Iggy Pop, the godfather of punk. But why did he do that? What was going on in his mind? Well, Iggy Pop was not a normal rock star. He was a rebel, a misfit, a provocateur. He was inspired by the avant-garde and the underground, by artists like Andy Warhol and the Velvet Underground. He wanted to break the rules and challenge the norms, to create something new and original. He wanted to express his raw emotions and his primal instincts, to unleash his inner animal. He wanted to make a statement, to make an impact, to make history. And he did. He and his band The Stooges created a new sound and a new style that would influence generations of musicians. They played loud and fast with distorted guitars and pounding drums. They sang about sex and violence, drugs and death, boredom and frustration. They performed with energy and intensity, with aggression and passion. They were not afraid to get dirty and bloody, to hurt themselves and others, to risk their lives and their careers. They were the pioneers of punk rock, the forefathers of grunge, the godfathers of alternative rock. But they also paid a price. They suffered from addiction and depression, from rejection and isolation, from violence and lawsuits. They broke up and reunited. They changed and evolved. They lived and died. They were not perfect. They were not heroes. They were not saints. They were human. They were flawed. They were real. They were the Stooges. And they were legends.
I vomited. I was ill. I'm not sorry I was ill. Everyone gets ill sometimes.
And there you have it. The top 20 rumors about rock stars that were totally true. Stories that seemed too crazy to be real, but were confirmed as facts. If you're craving more scandalous tales from the music world, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.